Hello, this is Judd Nelson calling for Graham Mermina. Is
Hey,
that how it's pronounced?
Yeah. How's it going, Nelson? How's it going, Mr. Nelson? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing good. So, today we're just talking about Stagecoach hitting theaters next Friday, November 4th in select cities, also hitting on demand and digital HD right afterwards. So my first question for you, what was your initial reaction when you were approached about doing the movie?
Well, I've never done a Western before, so it was a chance to do one of the classic genres in filmmaking, so I was like, sure.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think Stagecoach...
Also,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
And I was going to say that, Trace Adkins is just such a good guy, and he really was wonderful to work with. And Kim Coates, if you have to be tortured by someone, he's a good guy to have tortured. So I enjoyed it.
How do you think he played his role as Calhoun?
I thought he was great. He takes great joy in, I think, every role that he plays. And it's really fun to have someone take great joy in being a kind of bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I dug it.
So how do you think Stagecoach kind of differs itself from other old Western movies?
Well, I think in this case, the bad guy, in quotes, is not really a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who's the marshal trying to get the bad guy is not really a good guy. So usually Westerns, you have pretty clearly a white hat and a black hat. Mm-hmm. In this one, it's not that way. And I think that that provides a kind of interesting take on what we might imagine to be like, Robin Hood is not really a bad guy, but he is robbing people, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Texas Jack is robbing stagecoaches, but he's not really a bad guy.
So I think that's what kind of makes this, movie different than any other old Western movie, as you mentioned, which kind of stuck out to me too. And it's also interesting just for your character specifically, because like you said, Nathaniel's an outlaw, but he's more portrayed as a good guy. The U.S. Marshal Calhoun is more of a bad guy, despite being a good guy, as you would think on paper. And even Frank Bella's friend is more of a bad guy, as people see throughout the film. As for your character, Sid, where does this kind of leave him? Up until the end, anyway, kind of avoiding all spoilers. Where do you think this kind of leaves Sid on the spectrum between good guy and bad guy?
Well, he's more like a good friend, that he likes Texas Jack. He always has, He liked riding with him. He liked robbing, with him, robbing stagecoaches, robbing trains, whatever he wants. He's like a very optimistic sidekick. And that it's not a question of right and wrong and good and bad as far as Sid is concerned. Sid is going to stick by his friends. And he's going to, because, when Sid gets the, he gets tortured pretty badly, mm-hmm. and doesn't say a thing, He's one of those guys, you're going to have to kill him. He's not going to tell you anything. And I think that we all need a good friend like Sid, whether we're doing good deeds or bad deeds.
So Nathaniel was based off an actual story. The whole movie's based loosely off an actual story. Was the character Sid created just for the movie, or was that an actual person as well?
Yes. I believe that Sid was created just for the movie, and to provide a little bit of levity, Mm-hmm. And, it's funny, because so much of the Western lore is almost two-dimensional. And I think that part of the dialogue that Sid gets to have helps flush it out as, these are real people. They just lived in a different time. And not an easy time to live in. Geez, I can't imagine. Boy, living in the 1880s out west couldn't have been pleasant, Mm-hmm. Better not get sick. I think if you get sick, that's about it, Mm-hmm. Medicine is not what it is now. Probably really cold, too. I think that they didn't, I don't know if the Europeans really learned enough from the native population about how to deal with things like cold and mm-hmm. suffering, as we see in the Revenant as well,
Yeah, exactly. It all kind of blends together, all these kind of things that you learn. It's not only an enjoyable viewing experience, it's kind of a history lesson too. So that said, who did you look to for inspiration for your role as Sid?
Well, I like to look at the script primarily for, try and treat it like a treasure map, but the more time you spend studying it, the more nuggets are revealed. But also what's great is that Sid looks up to Trace. He looks up to Texas Jack, and Trace is such a good guy. He's very easy to like. He's an honest person. And so he was easy to, like, work with. It's like, sure, whatever you like, man, fine with me, you know? So it was very easy to sidle in there, to just ride alongside Texas Jack. You know, it's what the story called for, and it was incredibly easy working the chase.
So did playing a cowboy/outlaw in this movie fulfill any childhood dreams or fantasies for you, or were you not really too much into the Old West as a kid?
Well, I think, you know, there's a moment when I get to fire the guns at Calhoun and yell and scream. It's really fun. You know, you can't help but be like, yeehaw, let's do it again. You know, take two, you know? All that stuff's really fun. And I guess somewhere inside every American kid is this, you know, notion of the Old West gunslinger. You know, I think, what was that movie with Russell Crowe and Sharon Stone and Gene Hackman and the young Leonardo DiCaprio? Like where they have the, you know, gunfighting in the Old West on the street.
Oh, it sounds familiar.
Or something.
The title doesn't come to mind, but I think I know what you're talking about.
That's so great. I mean, you know, the whole idea of, you know, when the armorer comes out and all the guns, and it's like, which gun is Sid going to use? You know, it's like you're just looking at it and you feel like you're 10 years old, you know? It's just great.
So how did filming for stage...
horseback riding, I'm not a real accomplished horseback rider. I would say to say I'm an adequate horseback rider would be an exaggeration, but I didn't have to gallop, which was good, because I think that would have been trouble.
Well, that being said, did you have to learn how to horseback ride for this movie?
No, I knew how to ride a little bit in terms of, you know, being able to move the horse left and right, and how to get on, how to get off, how to be comfortable in the saddle. But I didn't have to do any galloping and that kind of stuff. I think that would have taken a lot of training. But we had great experts that would double and give me little tips to help me, and it was great. And who knows how much of it actually makes the movie, you know what I mean? It's like you do stuff. I'm sure that it's, you know, cut to make it, you know, move as fast as possible. So I was probably sweating details that won't even make it into the movie. That's crazy.
Yeah, you never know until the final cut. So that being said, how did filming for Stagecoach compare to other movies and shows that you've done over the course of your, you know, illustrious career?
Well, we didn't have very much time to shoot this at all. There were like a dozen shooting days. So we had 1 week where we had to rob 4 stagecoaches. And so there's no cover set. If the weather's bad, we were going to have trouble making, I think, our days. We got lucky with the weather. And you had to be quick. You had to. We were fortunate. The cinematographer was fast. The director knew what he wanted. We all came ready. And it's like, you know, you just get to it. So it definitely was, you have to function as a cohesive unit, as a team, or you're not going to get the work done. So, you know, that going in. So you can't have any little ego problems. You can't have any little... And I think that the wardrobe was incredible for the movie. And they did a wonderful job. And there's nothing like when they gear you up and you just look at that reflection and you go like, damn, man, it's a Western. This works. Let's go. You know? So I think that it was different in the sense that there was no margin for error at all. You know, every single minute was used to shoot the film.
So before coming together with Nathaniel and Frank in the movie, I don't think it was explicitly explained what happened or what Sid had been up to in the meantime, you know, prior to that point. Could you provide any insight on that, or should it just be left up to the viewer's imagination?
What's interesting is that the story doesn't really tell you. Little hints at what Frank might say, you know, that, you know, were Frank and Sid, were they doing things as well? But what you kind of learn is that Sid was more or less on his own a bit, because Frank lets Texas Jack know that this other guy they used to ride with was killed by Calhoun, just like for no reason, as far as they can tell. You know? So it's not like Sid is really privy to that information, but he is privy to enough information such that Frank doesn't have to tell the same information to Sid that he tells to Texas Jack about what happened. So there must have been some interaction between them. And then when we first see Sid, it's like he's like living in the woods, kind of. But he doesn't need any shelter. He seems comfortable just living off the land. He's got his alcohol. He's got a, you know, I think that Sid would probably not want a regular job under any circumstances. He's fine living the life, not as a criminal, but as maybe outlaw-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think when Sid runs low on money, he doesn't hold someone up with a gun on his own. He might work as a ranch hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
He might do things to get a little bit of scratch to get through. Probably plays a bit of cards. You know, I think Sid's, because he has a good demeanor, Sid does.
Mm-hmm.
He gets along with people. So I think Sid would use that talent to maybe alleviate some money from people playing cards. I think Sid can talk a lot, you know, so he'll talk while he card cheats, and no one's going to suspect him because he's just talking the whole time.
So more of like an anti-hero character then.
Yeah, you know, and, you know, doesn't want to draw too much attention to himself. You know, that he probably, I think that Sid would be a good guy to hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because we know he's going to have your back. He's not going to turn on anybody.
Mm-hmm.
He's an honorable guy that way. And I don't want to be a spoiler. I don't want to say who was not an honorable guy, but they'll find out soon enough when they see the movie who the helper of the bad guy is. You know. Yeah, there's always someone that betrays something in these movies.
Yeah, of course. It becomes pretty clear about halfway through. I can kind of see it when I was watching it yesterday, what, you know, the tides were kind of turning in that guy's favor. But don't want to spoil anything, like you said. So final two questions.
Did you like it? Because I've not seen it.
I enjoyed it. Well, from what you said, like I was going to ask you that. You haven't seen the final cut yet. I just watched it yesterday. I thought it was really good.
Cool. That's excellent. Because, you know, when you work on something, you always hope it's going to be great.
Yeah.
You know? No one goes into it hoping it's just going to be, like, not good. So.
Yeah.
I see little bits when I did the post-sync dubbing, like the looping. You see little bits and pieces, but you don't see the whole thing. And you don't see it with the music and when it's all color-timed and, you know, really tight. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad you liked it. That's good. Good to hear.
Yeah, no, I thought it came out really well. So on kind of that same note, too, from an easy-to-follow love story to the exciting gunslinging action, as you kind of alluded to, there seems to be something for everyone to kind of enjoy in this movie. Do you think there are any other aspects of the film that people should keep an eye out for?
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned it. You know, that love story aspect of it is really wonderful, mm-hmm. you know? And it's really like that Texas Jack is not going to become Texas Jack if you knew the facts about what happened. You know, in the house at the beginning, you know, because he's fine doing that kind of, you know, working at that kind of, you know, livery stable guy, you know, doing just domestic type things as a regular kind of worker out west, has a small business and wants to provide for his wife. He doesn't even know about the baby, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he never would have listened to Frank if he knew the truth. No way. You know, he would have just as soon turned himself in. Mm-hmm. He's willing to turn himself in almost all the way. I mean, once he knows that his wife's alive, he's willing to turn himself in also. You know, it's like, shit. The problem is that, you know, Calhoun is a killer. Calhoun's a sociopath by this point in the story. So,
mm-hmm.
you know, very dangerous to turn yourself into a guy like that.
Oh, absolutely. With the system rigged like that, it's like you said earlier. I mean, it's a very interesting dynamic with the outlaw kind of portraying the hero and the U.S. Marshal kind of being the villain. So it's very, you know, interesting and fun to follow in that respect. So, final question before we sorry, go ahead.
And there's a great moment that I'll tell you. I mean, I don't know whether whether you should allow it, like when people hear this or something. Mm-hmm. But there's a moment at the very end when the other marshal comes in. Mm-hmm. You know, at the very end, when
before it looks like he's going to arrest Texas Jack, but he goes for Calhoun instead.
Right, right. Now, what he does when he takes that badge away,
mm-hmm.
that was that actor's idea.
Oh, really? Did they do it on the spot?
And it was great. It was like we all were like, yes, because you know it's that symbol of the good guy, right? And that's not a good guy. He shouldn't have one of those.
Exactly.
And the actor just took it right from him, and it was great. It's like, you know, had I not been in the shot, I would have cheered. You know? I felt like cheering in the shot, but not, you know. Like, what are you doing, man? I'm sorry, you know.
It's kind of stuff like that. Yeah, like the small instinct things that kind of make the story that much better. Like the symbolism, pretty much.
Absolutely, and especially it sheds light on the very last, you know, scene when that symbol shows up again.
Yeah.
You know, for Texas Jack and Sid, which is kind of funny, because Sid's like, what the hell did I do with this?
I was wondering the same thing, what his reaction would kind of be, like you said, because he kind of, like, not even grew up, but was kind of hanging out in the woods when we first saw him, and then he's being given the badge at the end, so it's kind of a cool turnaround. But he really didn't know how to react, which was funny. But
yeah, it's like, come on, did you have something to do with this? What is this? And then Texas Jack shows him his, and he's like, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny because those things did happen a lot in the West.
Yeah.
You know the story, like the gunfight at the OK Corral. I mean, bad guys became good guys. I mean, real gunslingers became like town marshal. It's like in Unforgiven, Gene Hackman's role. Holy moly! And he beats the crap out of Richard Harris in that. That was an incredible scene.
Mm-hmm. So even stuff like that, it is realistic. It's not just for the movies. I mean, it makes for a great storytelling sequence, but it also really is real life in the way that it used to be back in the old days in the Old West. But that being said,
I mean, and it still is today, a certain degree, that right makes right. Who knows who's in charge here? Whoever has the biggest gun seems to be in charge. So
yeah, exactly. That's pretty much it. Even in 2016, even all these decades later. But final question for you: any other projects you're currently working on for the future?
There's one in the can called Creep, Kreep. That's about it's a contemporary story, but it's set in Texas. I play kind of down and outer, and I try and help this woman named Creep to get her from Texas through the border. That's pretty interesting. And there's one called The Billionaire Boys Club, which I made like 30 years ago. I played Joe Hunt in a miniseries, The Billionaire Boys Club. And now 30 years later, I played Joe Hunt's dad in a movie, and Kevin Spacey is in that. He plays Ron Levin. And then also is Taron Egerton, who was in The Kingsman, young English guy. He plays Dean Carney. And Ansel Elgort plays Joe Hunt.
Oh, okay. So stacked cast then.
Yeah, it's a great cast. Yeah, Emma Roberts. Who else did it? Carrie Elwes. Bokeem Woodbine. It's got a lot. It's got a good cast. It's so funny. Only in Hollywood can I play the guy and then play his dad.
Exactly. All these years later, that's a pretty cool turnaround, like I said. So.
Well, that's when you've gotten older. It's like, oh my God, dad now.
Exactly. That's when you've established yourself in Hollywood.
Or that you've lasted long enough, right?
Exactly. You've had great longevity since the start, too. But it's some awesome stuff that fans can keep an eye out for. Like I said at the start, Stagecoach hitting select theaters next Friday, November 4th in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Dallas, among other popular cities. Also available on-demand and digital HD shortly thereafterwards. So, Judd, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining me, man.
It's my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Have a great one. I'll catch you down the road.
Okay, man.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
a lot. Bye.